Is 6:27. I would like to call the meeting back to order.
Move.
I don't think we need to do all that. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing to adopt local law providing salary increases for certain county officers elected for a fixed term during their term. Anybody wish to be heard? Mr. Lattimore?
Can we amend the salary to 13.5 instead of 15?
When we get to the resolution, we could probably address that.
Okay, I just want to put it down as an option.
That will remain open for an hour, and we will move forward and come back to it. We do have one proclamation for tonight. I'm going to ask Ms. McNabb Coleman to come up to present the National Equal Pay Day.
Well, that's fitting, isn't it? Does we have that tonight?
Funny guys. Good evening. April 10th was a day of significance in this county, state, and nation. Equal Pay Day was a singular moment of time where we recognized the gender wage gap in this state and nation. However, fair pay remains significant and relevant no matter the date. In fact, until internal pay evaluations are conducted and women and men are equitably compensated across the board, fair pay should remain at the forefront. Melina Carnicelli reached out to all local female elected officials to raise our awareness of this day. Today, I would like to present the following proclamation in honor of Melina. Unfortunately, Melina is out of the country presently and could not be here tonight. But as many of you know, in addition to her career as an educator, administrator, entrepreneur, as well as serving on many community boards, Melina Carnicelli was the second woman elected to the Auburn City Council, and she was the first woman elected as mayor of the city of Auburn. Currently, she serves as the organizer of the Seneca Falls Women's March and is a facilitator of Women Elect, a political action committee providing women with the tools and knowledge to inspire their run for elected office. Melina is a gift to our region as she inspires women to reach their potential. Personally, I observed Melina's campaign for Auburn mayor very closely, almost 20 years ago, when my father was simultaneously running for city council. She left a tremendous impact on me, and I'm sure many women of this community. It's only fitting that we honor her with this proclamation centered on equality and inclusion. And I'd like to thank Chairman Mahunik for your help in proclaiming Equal Pay Day 2018 in Cayuga County. Whereas, actually I'm going to read without the glare, a little bit larger print. Whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Equal Pay Act, women, especially minority women, continue to suffer the consequences of unequal pay. And whereas, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, women working full-time, year-round in 2009 typically earned 77% of what men earned, indicating little change or progress in pay equity. And whereas, according to Graduating to a Pay Gap, a 2012 research report by the American Association of the University of Women, the gender pay gap is evident 1 year after college graduation, even after controlling for factors known to affect earnings such as occupation, hours worked, and college major. And whereas in 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was signed into law, which gives back to employees their day in court to challenge a pay gap. And now we must pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would amend Equal Pay Act by closing loopholes and improving the law's effectiveness. And whereas, according to one estimate, college-educated women working full-time earn more than $500,000 less than their male peers over a course of a lifetime. And whereas nearly 4 in 10 mothers are primary breadwinners in their household, and nearly 2/3 are primary or significant earners, making pay equity critical to families' economic security. And whereas a lifetime of lower pay means women have less income to save for retirement and less income counted in Social Security or a pension benefit formula. And whereas while New York State has the smallest gender wage gap in the country, women still only earn the equivalent of 89 cents to each man's dollar. and that number is even less for women of color. New York's Asian American, African American, and Hispanic and Latina women are paid 85 cents, 66 cents, and 50 cents respectively for every dollar earned by white non-Hispanic males. And whereas fair pay equity policies can be implemented simply and without undue costs or hardship in both public and private sectors. And whereas fair pay strengthens the security for families today and eases future retirement costs while enhancing the American economy. And whereas Tuesday, April 10th, symbolizes the time in 2018 when the wages paid to American women catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year. Now therefore be it resolved that Patrick Mahunik, Chairman of the Cayuga County Legislature, and fellow legislators do hereby proclaim Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, Equal Pay Day in Cayuga County, and urge citizens to recognize the full value of women's skills and significant contributions to the labor force, and further encourages businesses to conduct an internal pay evaluation to ensure women are being paid fairly. So I will present this proclamation to Melina, and I appreciate this very much.
All right, moving on to the minutes to approve. We have a motion, do we have a second? Second, Mr. Ripley. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those are carried. CCC report, Dr. Durant.
Good evening, everyone. Just a few updates since last month. Obviously, the enacted budget in place now. The college did receive, all community colleges did receive a $100 increase per FTE from the state budget. That net impact for us, as we look ahead for next year's budget development, is approximately $40,000 increase in base aid. Although we're grateful for the increase, certainly, given our fixed costs, as I'm sure you're well aware in your own budget, is not enough. But we're pleased compared to what it could have been. This is our first year that we've actually seen an increase in base aid based on the enrollment calculations in number of years, primarily because we've been able to stabilize and increase our enrollment in the last 2 years since I arrived. As we look ahead for applications for the fall, right now our applications for fall are up between 3% and 4%. That's where we've been trending the last few weeks, which is a positive sign. We had a number of recruitment activities over the last 6 weeks or so, and we continue to focus our efforts on that. And our summer enrollment at this point is actually slightly ahead of pace compared to where we anticipated as well. So for those of you interested in taking a class during the summer session or know someone, please encourage them to check us out. When we're going ahead, we're at this stage, we're obviously looking to finalize our budget. Typically, our trustees in April, I would like them to be able to approve the tuition and fee schedule so it's in place for us to be able to do our financial aid packaging and also to be able to communicate to prospective and current students what they can expect with their costs. Given the timing of the enacted budget and given the timing of a number of other things that were in consideration within the budget itself, we just didn't have the time to feel confident that we were fully zeroed in on where our tuition and fee schedule could lay. So we're going to be, our anticipation is to bring to our trustees, and the chair of our board today, Linda Van Buskirk, is with me, to bring to our trustees in May both the tuition and fee schedule and the full college budget with hope to get their approval to bring to you for consideration in June, which is our upcoming timeline. It's beneficial for all of us to be able to get it out in advance. Although early, and although it doesn't have the approval of our trustees, we are building in our budget development process, looking to come to you again for a 1.5% increase for funding, for our operating funding. It's something that we've targeted the last couple of years. It continues to make a significant difference for us, not only in our operating budget, but it makes a difference for us in our chargeback opportunities for out of county, and we'll be continuing to advocate for that over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. The other big pieces that are going out to college right now, our classes end spring semester a week from Friday. Although I know it feels like spring just started a couple of days ago, and we're hopeful that's actually here to stay. Our spring semester actually ends in the next 2 weeks. Commencement's less than a month away. And again, we're primarily focused now on supporting our students and celebrating them over the next month or so, and then being focused on from next year. The other big event on the campus, as I mentioned, I believe last month, is we are in the middle of a provost search at the institution, and expecting to host finalists for that position as early in mid-May, early May. So we may, hopefully we'll have an announcement or an update on that search at the May trustee meeting, at the May ledge meeting. But it's been a nationwide search, lots of interest, and we're going through the process right now, which, as you can appreciate, is rigorous and thorough, and trying to get as much constituency groups engaged as possible prior to commencement. So that concludes my formal report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Durant? Mr. Dennison?
I don't want to sound stupid, but what's a probo?
It's the Chief Academic Officer, Vice President of Academic Affairs.
So that's
It's
a
considered the
vacant.
#2 position in the organization. It's the individual that leads the credit and non-credit academic programming of the college.
So that's vacant right now, is what you're saying?
Currently, it's actually not vacant. It's a great point. Dr. Ann Herron, who's been to the college nearly 7 years, announced her retirement in January of 2019. So she's still there and doing wonderful work. We just chose to begin our search early to align with what the typical higher ed cycle would be, to try to attract the best candidates for this position.
Mr. Lattimore?
Good to see you tonight.
As well.
Your predecessor was talking big about regionalization or
Yep.
regional. I hope that that's gone away, or where does that stand now? Is the
It's a great question. I think regionalization, for those that are not familiar, is a sponsorship model that I think 2 community colleges in the state of New York are a part of or built by. That's something that was explored extensively by Cayuga Community College prior to my arrival. I tried to pick up that torch when I arrived with leadership from this body and leadership from our trustees to explore primarily with Oswego County. It never quite flourished at the moment. I think given our investment in Oswego County, given our presence, the number of students and residents we serve there, it's probably something that will be always kind of an ongoing discussion of possibility. But at this point, there's nothing that formally emerges other than our willingness to always explore with our partners what's the best interest for our sponsor, Cayuga, and most importantly, our students.
now the one of the industries that's growing in the region, and I know that Finger Lakes Community College has worked with Delago in regards to educating some of the people.
Right.
Now, the people who are fixing the machines are making like $35 an hour.
Right.
And I was wondering whether you had any communication with that industry at all in regards to maybe training versus culinary, which I think is maybe a less pay than let's say, technical machinist.
We have a number of people that have had conversations with Delago and others about what their human resource needs may be and how we can align on the workforce training side, how we can help support, communicate, and funnel students to them. We'll continue to have, as they evolve, we'll continue to have conversations with them, particularly on the technician side. I know our people, and particularly in the area of workforce development, have had conversations on how to meet their needs. But when it comes to, our commitment always has to be, whether it be Delago, whether it be other industries that emerge in our community, we want to be at the table with them to make sure we support them. And if it's not to the scale that makes sense for us as an institution, then who can we partner with to help be able to fill that void and funnel individuals to that? So sometimes the answer isn't us, but sometimes the answer is helping to work with others that can make sense, particularly in high-tech industry or in scale-up opportunities. So, they're great points. They're obviously growing and evolving, and we want to make sure that they know that we're here to help support them, and we can probably do a better job of investigating it and then reporting back.
That whole industry, whether or not it's the Oneidas or whether it's
Yeah.
Wilmots, it seems to be a job creator.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Next up, we have the County Administrator's Report. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a very, very busy month. We've had a lot of fun. Had several meetings with you, several grievance hearings, and several labor management meetings. We're gearing up to start our labor negotiations with CSEA in the upcoming months. Been working on a number of energy projects and working with Capusa. Been working very closely with Lynn and Steve on rolling out the shared services initiative. We've got some tentative dates that we're getting ready to lock down with the department heads and then share with the elected officials in the towns, and the villages, and the mayor, the city manager. That would have a kickoff date in May and several panels in June. We're looking at, unfortunately, Friday afternoons, but that seems to be when it does not conflict with any other municipal meetings. There's almost no nights where there's no municipal meetings. Somebody's meeting every night between the 33 municipalities. So we're going to roll them out on Friday afternoons, and then hopefully we'll find a good place to have refreshments afterwards. We've been working a lot on the broadband initiative. There's a couple of providers who are coming through with the Phase 3 build-out. We've been meeting with both Frontier and New Visions about their right-of-way work permits and working through, trying to guide them through that process and get those permits issued so they can continue with their build-out. There was a good report prepared in the monthly report, in the written version that was just released for last month that Jay and Ray worked on, updating you on Raise the Age. Our planning for that is still moving forward. We expect some more state guidance coming down shortly with a template for what that plan should look like. And as soon as we have more on that, we look forward to presenting that to you. The chair and I also presented at the Wednesday morning roundtable, what I like to call the Breakfast Club, and Inside Government this afternoon. We talked at both of those meetings about the CGR report, and this afternoon also about shared services. A couple other things that we're working on. I sent an update out about Stewart's Corners Road, and you'll see there was an addition to your agendas tonight for a resolution authorizing engineering services. We did have to close that road down due to a washout and it being unstable and unsafe to the public. So we hope to have that designed this month, bid, and back in front of you for approval with an award for next month, and so that we can get that road repaired this season. And Steve Tobin and his staff and I have also been preparing a proposal for a new website, which we'll bring forward to you next month. I wanted to take a step back. I made a presentation to you a couple weeks ago about the priorities from coming out of the CGR report. And there was a lot of focus, I think, here and in the press about the number of positions discussed. And while there certainly was a number of positions discussed, it's also important to focus on where those were discussed in terms of short-term or medium or longer term. I think a lot of that was really showing you a roadmap and a vision for where we might like to end up. And as we begin to bring forward recommendations from that proposal, including tonight with the enterprise, what you'll see is a concerted effort to try to balance any strategic investments that are recommended with either being able to absorb it in next year's budget or other savings that we can demonstrate through other initiatives. So the reason for starting with some of these lower hanging fruit, like the enterprise, car lease, or the website, which we can find money for in the existing budget, is because those are relatively lower hanging fruit, and it frees up additional resources that hopefully we'll be able to reinvest, and we won't be increasing the overall tax burden with the recommendations we're bringing forward in the short term. Happy to take any questions on what I've discussed, or if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to let Lynn give kind of a budget update.
Okay.
We have a handout here for you. It's got the fund balances and the reserves funds are available.
While Lynn's passing that out, there's just two other things I wanted to mention that I forgot. One is that there will be a CCDC meeting later this week, a Cayuga County Development Corporation meeting, and at that meeting, we'll be talking about setting up the loan funds for the money that was approved earlier in the month. And secondly, there's a very large exercise going on from the Health Department that you all received an email about. This is part of a public preparedness exercise, and we'll continue to update you, and if you receive any more information, please know that this is a drill. But in this drill, we have a confirmed case of hepatitis A, and the Health Department will be setting up a response to that. And this is an ongoing activity for a couple more days? For a couple more days, and so you may receive some additional communication about that.
Okay, so I've handed out for you just a summary. The top of the report shows the unappropriated fund balances, what we had at the end of 2016 and what we have at the end of 2017. And these are the three funds that we talk about when we're budgeting. The A fund, which is the general fund, the D fund, which is the county road fund, and the DM fund, which is the road machinery fund. And you can see how they have changed from one year to the other. And then at the bottom, I've included for you the reserve accounts that we have that are available for any type of expenditures that you might have during the year. Most of them, as you can see, are capital, parks, nature center, buildings, and then we have the two new ones at the bottom that you just established at the end of 2017. So you kind of see a very offsetting relationship here. The fund balances have gone down overall by 3.7 million, but the reserves have gone up by 3.8 million. And these actually are just preliminary numbers. We still have some closing entries where we'll end up moving some of those fund balance amounts in the A fund into some of these reserved for the buildings. We just haven't gotten to doing that yet, but it's probably a couple $100,000 at the most. It wouldn't be, hugely significant amounts. We're just gonna move from one bucket to another. The other thing I can tell you too is I have been looking at the review of this doesn't give a good reflection necessarily of how our budgets perform during the year, because we actually could sometimes, we bring resolutions during the year to use the fund balance for certain projects that we're doing. That would have nothing to do with our performance of our budget. That's something that you're doing on top of it. So for the D fund, we had planned on using $372,000 in their budget. They only used $171,000 in their budget for the D fund, so they outperformed it by $201,000. And in the DM fund, we plan on using $379,000, and we actually added to the fund balance by $32,000. So they outperformed by $400,000. So both of those had a pretty good year, and that actually was with the $1 million. We spent $600,000. Even George had anticipated $1 million on the road that was washed out in Moravia. It was only $600,000. So even with that, we actually had CHIPS revenue was higher than we budgeted, so it helped to offset that spending. So that's actually some pretty good news that they had a good performance even with that. The other thing that I was finishing reviewing today is the A fund. We had planned on using $480,000 of the fund balance. We've actually added $1.5 million to the fund balance. So that's a $2 million performance over what we had planned on using. And the large majority is that sales tax was over by $1.7 million. We actually just booked a year-end accrual for that. And since the sales tax has been better all during the year, that actually helped to bring it up even higher. I'm actually going to finish analyzing this for you all because we had a lot of other big differences. Social services actually had a really bad year. We were over our budget by $900,000, which was mainly driven by foster care expenditures. This other state training schools I call it, which is for certain delinquent youth that the state changed how they allocate expenditures out by your usage compared to everybody else in the state. And, the per diem is about $1,000 a day is how much it costs when you have a youth there, and we have had several youth there during the year. So that was over by 400,000. And we have lost some, federal and state aid over a couple of years. I mean, we definitely have been hit, and the governor has not replenished any of those funds that they cut back in 2008, 2009, when the economy was bad. They have not replenished any of that money. So I'm going to finish doing a summary for you all so you can see exactly what departments, but that takes a little bit of time to do for that. I did look quickly. I mean, Mr. Batman had asked me to look at the performance so far in 18. I looked at it overall. Expenditures and revenues are right in line overall. But as you know, we are missing someone in the Treasurer's Department, so we really are focusing on getting 17 closed up accurately, which was still a lead in probably 18 that I have to look to see what entries, need to still be made that are maybe routine entries that have maybe not been done yet. So probably next month I'll have a better picture, and then we'll have 4 months that we can look at to really get a trend. I mean, I did see a sales tax report that Justin had sent me, and actually our year-to-date sales tax was lower in 18 than it was in 17 per the state. So since we had such a great year, that's not making me have any concerns, because we didn't even budget at all to meet our sales tax goal that we had in 17. So we'll have more of analysis with that when we get another month in and see how close we are to being on track. But the jail inmate revenue looks good, actually, at the beginning of the year. I looked at that's holding good too. And obviously, we don't have any allocations or anything yet from the governor's budget, so I don't know anything about social services yet for what we're going to be getting for funding, whether it's been cut or anything. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Lattimore.
Two items that I like to check all the time is our responsibility to our employees. The pension costs are going to be hopefully down this year. Have you got any indication on that?
Well, I think, what we've been contributing that the state requires has gone down a little bit. But what's actually helping us out is that new employees, being on a Tier 6, have substantially lower contribution. Most of our people have been a Tier 4 for a long time. I mean, if you leave out the law enforcement people, and I think their retirement contribution was about 14%, and I think for Tier 6 people, it's like 8%. So, you'll start picking up, even if the rates don't continue to drop, you're going to start picking up on the fact that we're getting more Tier 6 employees working here, which will just have a lower contribution. So that will be helping us.
And our health consortium is fully funded. It's got 10 million that doesn't reflect in this. So, I mean, our health costs we just took the city in.
They did, and we've had good performances, but as you know, there's pressures on healthcare, certain pharmacy costs and stuff. So we do what we can to keep the premiums down. As you know, I'm on the consortium, and we're trying to keep it always with a 6 or a 7% increase when things are still going up at 12 to 15%. So I'm sure that will continue to go up. Just how it is.
And I just wanted to recognize sitting next to me is a former member of this ledge, Mr. Baxter from Moravia. Good to see you, Terry.
Thanks, buddy.
Mr. Ripley.
On your sheet here with the reserve highway roads and bridges, is that up to date? I mean, we did have two major projects going on, one in Senate and another one in Stewart's Corners. Does that still hold?
No, that is not reflected in here because those happened after the end of 2017. So that will actually factor more into me trying to project how we're going to be doing. I think this is very unusual activity in the highway department for us, so I am going to have to really look at that much closer than in past years. We're really, quite frankly, we always have had extra money not being spent in the highway funds. I don't know that we'll be able to count on that this year, so we'll have to look at that closely.
That's to the tune of $1 million. So
It could be. We don't have final numbers on that yet. I mean, it could be. Worst case scenario.
that's what we project.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Batman.
Yeah, and not, of course, for the decision or discussion tonight, but I would suggest that we be very careful about not funding the things that Mr. Ripley is talking about out of the reserves for highway. The intent of that reserves, I think we need to remind ourselves, were to provide a pool of money to get our roads up to standard. Thanks. Thanks, Charlie. And so if at all possible, I think that should come out of the regular fund balance which is there in part to deal with emergencies. And these roads are certainly an emergency, and hopefully the last one this year.
I agree with